Welcome to the next session, friends. In this session, we are going to look at the typical documents created by a technical writer. So let's start with our first slide. A technical writer could be required to work on different types of documents. Typical technical documents require a level of specificity that is beyond regular speech or day-to-day speech. Documenting those facts and then passing them on is the only solution. Broadly, documents can be categorized into two types. One, documents that inform the reader. Second, documents that instruct the reader. A document that is containing only information objective will not be as detailed as a document designed for giving instructions. Documents like brochures, catalogs, data sheets, they just give the information about the product. Documents like user guides, maintenance guides, and so on are giving information as well as instructions. Let's go ahead and take a look at the documents that a typical technical writer can create. On this slide, you will see the documents that a technical writer could at times be called to create. It's not common to ask a technical writer to work on these type of documents, but in the industry, many technical writers are taking responsibility of developing these documents also. These are commercially and technically highly sensitive business documents. Let's look at the first one. RFP is a request for proposal. Request for proposal is given by a client or the buyer to the supplier, saying that this is my requirement and I request you to submit a proposal for fulfilling my particular requirement. So RFP will lay down the terms and conditions of the contracting engagement. It may spell out some technical details of the problem or the requirement of the client. In a response to RFP, the supplier gives what we call as a proposal. So it is a response to the request for proposal that the client has given. A proposal will contain technical data, commercial data, and other reference information. So there could be information like products, technical data included in it. There could be information like commercial details of the bid, which will include price, payment methods, and so on. And finally, reference information about the company, about the team which will work on that particular project, and so on. A technical writer could be called upon to edit a proposal or create it from scratch. The next type of document, as you can see in the slide, is the system requirement specification. Now this document is typically prepared in a IT industry. Whenever a client wants application software, the client may specify the specific requirements, saying that the system that will be installed should be able to support 500 transactions per hour. The system should support 200 concurrent users. The system should have data on a separate server and business logic on a separate server, and so on. System requirement specification is given by the client. Let's go ahead to the next slide. Here we look at the documents which are designed to inform the reader. Document like a brochure. A brochure tells the buyer what he is going to buy and what features will he get with that. A brochure may not always have commercial information in it. A brochure will tell about the system, its features, what are the benefits that the buyer will get out of those features, and so on. For example, if you go and buy a car, you will probably be given a brochure of the car which will have a photograph of the car and some of the technical information which you may be interested in. A brochure is something that engages you and arouses interest in your mind. Next document is the data sheet. A data sheet is a typical technical document written for engineers. A data sheet is given by a product's manufacturer to the designers and developers who could be using that product. So let us say I am developing an integrated circuit or a microprocessor, and that processor will be used by design engineers of some other company to develop the motherboard of a computer. I'll need to give them complex technical information. Now here the audience is the engineer who understands the complex technical terms. So it's natural that I'll be using similar technical language in this particular data sheet. Data sheets are rarely written for end users. Data sheets are almost always written for technical audience, design engineers, service engineers, and so on. The next document is a white paper. Now, white paper is often thought of as a marketing collateral. White paper actually is a fact publishing document. You can write a white paper about a technology, you can write a white paper about a product, or you can write a white paper about your company's offerings. White paper can be used for marketing if the facts are on your side. White paper is different than a brochure. White paper is definitely not a brochure of your product. For example, if I go in the market and I decide to buy a car, the car manufacturer may tell me that this car includes a MPFI engine, which is a multiple point fuel injection system engine. And there could be a white paper published on MPFI technology. So, white paper will give me in detail information about that technology, but that paper by itself may not be able to sell a car. So, white paper serves a different purpose, and so does a brochure. Let us now look at some more documents that a technical writer could prepare. Release notes. A release note is a document which is typically given to an existing customer. For example, let us say I am using a particular accounting software and I am using the version 5. If my vendor, that is an application developer company, brings out a new version 6, it may send me release notes. Release notes will tell me what features are newly added to version 6, what features have been removed, for what reason, and then how do I work with it. Maybe what are the changes in the user interface and so on. So, a release note may assume that the user is using an existing version, or a release note could also be written for a totally new user. Release notes are not as comprehensive as user guides or admin guides. They are typically a few pages only. They just help the user to get acquainted with the product and the product's features. Release notes may go to a technical audience or can even go to an end user, unlike data sheets, where data sheets go only to the technical audience. The next document is the installation guide. Installation guide is very simple really. It gives you step by step information about how to install the product and how to start working with it. A typical installation guide will tell you what are the prerequisites, how can you get started with the installation, what are the steps, and how do you know that the installation is successfully completed. If the installation is not completed, what message will you get? So, installation guide is many times given as a separate document in printed form. Installation information will be required before installing the product. That is the reason most of the times it is printed separately and given. Installation guides will be useful to technical audience or even to the end users, depending on the complexity of the product. Next document is the administrator's guide. Administrator's guide goes to a product's administrator. There are different types of administrators really. So, you could have a user administrator, you could have a products administrator, you could have a network administrator, you could have a database administrator, and so on. So, depending on your product and the nature or architecture of the product, you will develop the administrator guide and give it to the administrator. Once again, administrator is a technical audience. So, that person is going to expect classical technical information which should be given in the administrator's guide. Let us go ahead to the next slide. A user's guide. A user guide is written for a typical end user. It tells the user what the user can do with the product. One of the problems that most technical writers face is they end up writing a document that describes what the product does. The challenge really is to explain what the user can do with the product and not what the product can do for the user. If you tell me that this phone can help me make a call, that is good. If I can make a call and I can make a conference call, that is still better. So, you have to take the perspective of the user. You have to look at the product from the user's point of view and tell the user what he is enabled to do because of this particular guide. Similar to your user guide, you will have online help. Online help could be in a .hlp format for Windows 95 or NT application, or could be in a CHM format for Windows 98 and all versions after that. Online help could also be given in the form of .html, which can be opened over internet through a browser. Online help could often be linked to the actual product. So when you hit the key F1, you will go to the what we call as the context sensitive topic. So depending on what screen have you sought help, you will directly get help related to that screen. This is called as the context sensitive online help. In addition to the context sensitive topics, the online help may have a number of reference topics as well. Online help typically will give you a feature to search for any word or to search for the indexed keywords and so on. Next document is the training material. Training material is slightly different than a user guide. A user guide typically explains various steps and processes, whereas a training material is written considering the learning objectives in mind. So a training material takes a step-by-step approach in training the user. It may ask the user to go through a predefined sequence of lessons and exercises so that ultimately you get trained on doing a particular thing or completing a particular task. A training material is written based on the theory that is called as the instructional design theory. ID is another career that a technical writer can get into. It's a good in-demand career, and there is a lot of content that technical writers today are producing which is ID compliant. Many technical writers have moved into jobs related to instructional design. We develop a lot of computer-based training and web-based training which is used to train the user. All that comes under training material. So training material could be a printed document. It could also be a CD that I can give which the user can interact with on his own and learn. Let's go to the next slide. You have got test cases and test scripts. Test cases are written to test a particular software product against what is expected. So typical test case will tell you that under so and so circumstances, if you take these 5 steps, this is the output or this is the result that you should get. In a test case, we document all this. Depending on the complexity of the product, there could literally be hundreds or thousands of test cases. Test scripts are written by test engineers. They are written to automate a number of tests. So the documentation of test cases and test scripts is imperative in a company's development environment. The development team, which may have a team of testers in itself, will be using these documents. Test cases are never given to the end user of the product. They are only used by the project or the development team. API documentation. API stands for Application Program Interface. A typical API document tells a user, or maybe what we can call as a power user, how to use a product beyond what it is already designed for. For example, writing macros in Word. If I know the language of programming used in Word macros, I can make Word do things which it would otherwise not do. So I am using the power of that programming language to make Word do something which I want it to do. APIs are very important because we have a number of products which interface to each other. In such cases, those products will have to send data or receive data from some other product. There, this document will be used by designers and engineers to develop a protocol so that both the products can communicate to each other. Next type of document is the command reference. Command reference document is used by programmers so that they can use the commands or the functions that have already been created by somebody else. So once again, command reference is a technical document and will not go to the end user of the product. Command reference allows them to use functions or small snippets of programs written by others so that they can simplify their work and avoid duplication of work. A command reference typically tells the syntax of the command, the conditions in which the command is executed, what value will you get after the command is successfully executed, and when does a command end, or what could be an error condition in which it will end. A command reference document also gives an example of how a particular command is to be used. Let's go to the next slide. In this slide, you see process documentation and knowledge base documentation. What is a process document? Any organization has a number of people working on a number of things. and to make sure that everybody is giving the optimum performance and the outcome should be predefined and measurable, companies try to standardize the processes. These processes need to be documented and communicated to all the team members of the company. At times these processes could also be communicated to the external world or to certifying agencies. So a company may get ISO certified or ACI CMM certified based on the process documentation that they develop. All these standardization agencies will require process documentation. Technical writers can also help develop this process documentation. Recently we had some developments after which the United States government came up with the Sarbanes-Oxley compliance. So compliance documents can also be developed by technical writers. There are many writers who are writing these type of documents to earn their bread and butter. Next type of documents that we look at are called as the knowledge based documents. Knowledge based documents are in a way a specialized document. They are written for the end user, but these are some applications of the product which not every user will come across. Let me give you a very simple example. You may have seen a microwave oven. A microwave oven will have predefined number of switches. It may have a display, it may have a dial to change the timing, or it may have some buttons. All in all, it may have some 8 or 10 controls only. Now all those controls and the complete functionality can be explained in, let's say, 10 or 15 pages user guide of the microwave oven. However, if I want to prepare a dish, so let us say I am preparing a pulao for my family. Now making of pulao will have or will make effective use of microwave, but it will have many other steps involved, like cutting the vegetables or washing the rice and so on. These activities will not be done inside the microwave, but the microwave is still an important part of making of pulao. So then I write a recipe book. The recipe book simply tells the user how to make a particular recipe using microwave. That document we call as a knowledge based document. It's not practical to cover this recipe in the user manual of the microwave, so we cover it in a recipe book. A recipe book is a good example of a knowledge based document. Similarly, I can use a tool like Captivate or Authorware to develop what we call as a SCORM compliant learning course. It needs specific steps. I may be required to perform, let's say, 50 steps within Captivate or 50 steps within Authorware. Out of these, some steps could be taken outside Authorware also. So all in all, I may have 70 steps, and it's not practical to cover all these steps in the user guide of the Authorware. So then a writer comes up with a new document which says how to use Authorware to create a SCORM compliant course. Let us now go ahead and look at some of the sample documents that are used in a typical IT industry. We'll look at what are the contents of these documents and why do they contain information like that.